Hi, kids. Today we're going to finish up the presentation part of lesson 1, which is called the characteristics of cells. And our objective today is to look at the two main categories of cells and then some things that are included in both those types of cells. All right, so what parts, I guess that's the word I was just looking for, what parts do all cells have? Well, they have 4 things. One's called cell membranes, and we'll learn all of these in just a little bit. I guess I'll explain them at the time. Then we have what's called cytoplasm, organelles, and DNA. You've probably heard of DNA, at least maybe the term. Okay? And these parts like work as a team, just like if you're on any kind of team, everybody has a different job. Well, that's what these do. They work together to help carry out all the tasks that we need our cells to do. Well, not just us, anything living. Sorry, it's my dog you hear. All right, first of all, we have a cell membrane. And if this is like a basic cell, okay, you see this layer around the outside of it. Okay, that's the cell membrane. Acts as a barrier or something that is in between the inside of the cell and the outside, or the environment. Okay, and it controls specifically the water and the oxygen, but what moves in and then what comes out. All right, the next thing is called cytoplasm. So this is the region that's enclosed by the cell membrane. So all this inside in here, okay? And it's this fluid, but it's kind of thick fluid, but it's where all the organelles are, and that's called cytoplasm. And next, again, we have those organelles. Again, in our bodies, we have organs, lots of them, but brain, heart, lungs, whatever. Well, the organelle is the little parts in the cell. So we have parts inside of us. Well, the cell has parts inside of it, and those parts are called organelles with L, E-L-L-E on the end of it. Okay, and they all do a specific job. So if you look at our bodies, our brains tell us what to do and how to act and where to move and all of that. Our brains are in charge. Our lungs' job is to help us breathe, or to breathe, okay? Our heart's job is to pump the blood throughout our body. Well, the same thing, organelles have a job inside the cell. And cells can usually have more than one type of organelle, okay? Most of these organelles, not all, but a big percentage, have a membrane around them, okay? So just like we talked about, the cell membrane covers the outside of the cell, well, each organelle inside of it has another membrane around it. Okay, here's an advanced drawing of a cell. We're going to talk more about these parts in a couple weeks, so I'm not going to bother with you that right now. All right, here is DNA. If you did or did not know what its big, huge, long scientific word is, it is deoxyribonucleic acid. All right, it is genetic material. It is in our genes, okay? Not your denim Levi jeans, okay, but the genes in your body. And our DNA gives us all instructions for what we do. It's why you have blonde hair or dark hair, or your eye color, or we'll go through a whole lot. Those are all called traits. That's what our DNA tells us. And you get that, or any organism gets that from their parent or parents. Oops, we're going the wrong way. Sorry. All right. Generally, well, you'll learn the terms later, but like in humans or animals, okay, the DNA is in this membrane bound, so it's an organelle with a membrane around it, and it is called the nucleus. Okay, that's where I don't want you to get confused when I use the word thinking, but that's what runs the cell, is in the nucleus. If you would compare this to the middle school, it would be like Mr. Malcolm, or the district to Mrs. Adams, okay? So that's where the DNA is stored, in that organelle called a nucleus. All right, now, there are 2 types of cells in the world. All right, and we just talked about they have those 4 parts in common, but there's big differences from that point on. Okay. And how we decide which one they are is how their DNA is stored. Okay. So where their DNA is in the cell, where that instructional material is, that's how we know what type of cell it is. All right. So the first one, and I know it looks like a hard word, but you'll learn it in a few days. Prokaryote. Prokaryote. And it is single-celled. I think we learned on Wednesday that single-celled is, that word is unicellular. Sorry, unicellular. UNI. Okay, like a unicycle. If you've ever seen somebody ride in a parade or something. Okay, unicellular is single-celled. It does not have a nucleus. No, or any organelles with a membrane around it. Most common term that maybe you've heard would be bacteria, is this prokaryote. Okay, the DNA just floats around in the cytoplasm. Again, there is no nucleus. Okay, they do have some organelles called ribosomes. We're going to get into that later, but you just need to know there is no nucleus. All right, here's different pictures. We'll look at this one the most. We'll get into all of that later in this 9 weeks, but for now, all you need to know is there is no nucleus in a prokaryote. Okay, the type of cells that are in things most familiar with you are called eukaryotes, and that's how we're going to remember it. You have eukaryotic or eukaryote cells, okay? And those cells have their DNA in the nucleus. So there is a nucleus. So we're looking at plants and animals. We are considered an animal. So plants and animals, fungi, okay? That's mushrooms to you, okay? And then something called protist, okay? These eukaryotic cells have organelles with membranes around them, and they also have ribosomes. Again, we're going to get into that 2 or 3 weeks. Don't worry about it. What you need to know is it has a nucleus. Prokaryotes, no nucleus. Eukaryotes, nucleus. Okay? All right. There are some unicellular organisms that are eukaryotes because they do have a nucleus, but generally they don't. So don't get too hung up on that. Kind of just generally think prokaryotes, no nucleus, eukaryotes, nucleus. All right. If you are an in-school student, we're going to do this on the board a little bit on Thursday. There will be some questions in your questions associated with this as well. Okay, so what we need to do is identify these parts. So if we look at letter A, and I know it's a little hard to tell, but it's going to this outside greenish portion here of these terms. That would be the cell membrane. Then section B is going to this, it looks like rubber bands or spaghetti or something. Remember, there is no nucleus in this prokaryotic cell. So that would be DNA, and it is in the cytoplasm. Again, there's no nucleus. All right. Letter C is on this yellowish filling type thing, and that is the cytoplasm. And then D is to these little dots, okay? And those would be organelles. So now over here, this is actually an animal cell, okay? Something that would be found in humans, cows, dogs, cats, whatever, okay? So letter E is pointing to this outside, and again, this is like if you were looking down in, but to this outside covering. So of course, that's the cell membrane. F is pointing to this big kind of like peach pit or something, seeds in an apple. That is the nucleus, okay? So the DNA is in the nucleus. Then G is pointing to all this filler material. And if you remember, that is the cytoplasm. And then H is pointing to all of these things. And you will learn their names in about 3 weeks, but those are the organelles. All right, again, here's a prokaryotic cell. Here is a eukaryotic cell. Well, maybe if I can get it to work right. Okay. Again, we'll learn all these names and all their jobs, but you can see it's much more complicated or complex than the prokaryote. All right, let's look at these review questions real quickly, and then we will be done. The cell of a blank organism must carry out all of these functions. Okay, so it doesn't live inside of a bigger organism. So that would be unicellular, single cell. And an organism made up of more than one cell is then, if it has more than one, it is multicellular. Okay, part of the cell theory, we're going to go over those three things a lot, but all cells come from existing cells. And then lastly, the organelle that contains DNA in eukaryotic cells is called what? The center where it all happens, that is the nucleus. All right, again, you'll have some questions to do. Redos are available. So hopefully you'll do well. Take care.